I'm Eric Vincent, and I am from Many Christian. I've been faithful to God, to His promises, and to His precepts. I've recently been finding myself in the Old Testament where I have found some characters who stayed faithful towards God. I want to talk about the fruits of faithfulness. People like Samuel, David, Gideon, and Daniel. Samuel's result of faithfulness was being able to experience God's signs, like miracles, hearing His voice. David's result of faithfulness was unrestrained worship and wholehearted devotion towards God. Gideon's fruit of faithfulness was God's protection and God's will for him to win the battle. The fruit of faithfulness for Daniel was abundant life after the lion's den. So we have seen the basic result of faithfulness per person. So now we're going to go into depth of what Samuel's faithfulness looked like. Samuel, who was a man who was faithful to God all of his life, being a prophet even during childhood, he was serving in the church, and because he was faithful towards God, God called him 3 times. Each time he went to Eli, the high priest at that time. And the 3rd time he went to Eli, Eli said it was the voice of God. So he said to Samuel to respond to it. So let's hop into that passage where we find that story in 1 Samuel 3:4-5 and 8-9. Then the Lord called Samuel. Samuel answered, "Here I am." And he ran to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me?" The 3rd time the Lord called Samuel, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am. You called me." Then Eli realized that the Lord was calling the boy. So Eli told Samuel, "Go and lie down, and if he calls you, say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. So we see Samuel being faithful by going and doing what Eli has told him to do. His result of faithfulness was talking to God, experiencing His signs. From seeing Samuel's result of faithfulness, let's listen to the lyrics of David's faithfulness towards God. David was a man who was faithful to God in all circumstances, no matter what life throws at him. He lived as a shepherd, fighting lions, bears, and Goliath. Oh my! But we're not talking about Goliath today. One such circumstance was when Saul summoned David to play the lyre and to sing, to soothe his spirit. Let's go explore what sounds soothed Saul in 1 Samuel 16:14 and 21-23. Now the Spirit of the Lord had departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord tormented him. David came to Saul and entered his presence. Saul liked him very much, and David became one of his armor bearers. Then Saul sent word to Jesse, saying, "Allow David to remain in my service, for I am well pleased with him." Whenever the Spirit from God came on Saul, David would take up his lyre and play. Then relief would come to Saul, and he would feel better, and the evil spirit would leave him. So when David went to play for Saul, he would play soothing spiritual songs like hymns of praise. And so as he was in service to Saul, he was still praising God, which it soothed Saul, soothed the king. And if you didn't know what a lyre was, it was an instrument similar to the harp, and it was one of the main instruments of the time. So David would play and sing at the same time, so he was being faithful towards God in unending praise and wholehearted devotion towards God. As we have listened to the praises of David's faithfulness, let's move on to altars being knocked down and battles being won with Gideon. Gideon, who was a young judge of Israel, who at first was terrified of the persecution coming his way, but after God strengthened him, he found the confidence needed to go on to do what God wanted him to do. The story we are talking about today is the battle the Lord had him do against a Midianite camp of 135,000 men with a group of 300 men. And The way they won the battle was unconventional, to say the least. Let's prepare for war as we read the story of Gideon winning an impossible battle. Judges 7:15 through 16 and 19 through 20. When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and he worshipped. He returned to the camp of Israel and called out, "Get up! The Lord has given the Midianite camp into your hands." Dividing the 300 men into 3 companies, he placed trumpets and empty jars in the hands of all of them, with torches inside. Gideon and the 100 men with him reached the edge of the camp at the beginning of the middle watch, just after they had changed the guard. They blew the trumpets and broke the jars that were in their hands. The 3 companies blew the trumpets and smashed the jars, grasping the torches in their left hands and holding in the right hands the trumpets they were to blow. And they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." As we could see, the battle is unconventional, using vases, torches, horns, and a shout. But he was faithful to encompass the Midianite camp. Later on it says, the whole way home, the Midianites cried. But Gideon was faithful to end the battle, although the means weren't normal. His fruit was God gave him the protection and the will they needed to win the battle. So staying faithful gets you victories. At the beginning, Gideon thought he was a victim, but it turns out he was a victor. From Gideon's battle with vases and torches, let's move on to Daniel's faithfulness by staying steadfast in prayer and the lion's den. Daniel was a faithful man his whole life, from when he was 15 and took over to Babylon, when he was faithful to stay in the same diet that he was in before. Although the king's advisors made a law to target Daniel and to throw him to the lion's den. So let's prayerfully consider Daniel's story in this passage. Daniel 6, 10, and 16, and 22. Now when Daniel learned that the decree had been published, he went home to his upstairs room with a window open towards Jerusalem. 3 times a day he got down on his knees and prayed, giving thanks to his God just as he had done before. So the king gave the order, and they brought Daniel and threw him to the lion's den. The king said to Daniel, "May your God, whom you serve, continually rescue you." Daniel said, "My God has sent his angel, and he shut the lions, the mouths of the lions. They have not hurt me because I was found innocent in his sight, nor have I ever done anything wrong in your sight, your majesty." So we see Daniel staying faithful in the midst of persecution from the advisors by staying steadfast in prayer, and because he was faithful towards God, the Lord shut the lion's mouth, and as a result of the faithfulness, God put him second in command, and he allowed Daniel to live the rest of his life more abundantly. As we have seen the results of faithfulness, let's go and recap what we have just learned from Samuel, David, Gideon, and Daniel. So we have seen the results of faithfulness from Samuel with experiencing God's encounters, visions, audible signs. From David with wholehearted devotion and unending praise. From Gideon with God's protection and God's will to have a victory. And finally from Daniel with abundant life after the lion's den. Here's one final scripture to leave you guys off with. Psalm 91:4. His faithfulness will be your shield and rampart. So that's just saying, stay faithful towards God, as his faithfulness will protect you. Remain faithful to experience these results of faithfulness mentioned in this message. Go in peace and be blessed.
Thanks, man.